Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Simsonn Plus X pedals. So I am actually really excited to check these pedals out. I've literally only just pulled them out of the box, so you're seeing them for the first time along with me. This is how they came packaged. They just came in a standard brown box. I pulled them out and this is what was inside. Before we get into it, I should mention that this video is in no way sponsored by Simsonn. All the opinions you're going to hear in this video are completely just my own thoughts on the pedals. With that said though, I probably will have an affiliate code that you can use if you want to pick something up over on the Simsonn store. It'll either be in the description or I'll put it as the top pinned comment or both. But anyway, let's get into it. Hey, initial impressions on the packaging. I'm pretty impressed. Everything has its own individual slot where it can't really move. Simsonn also sent over their base plate, as you can see here. Now, this comes in two separate parts. You've got the main base plate here, and you've got this kind of little face plate with their branding on it, which I have to say looks really nice, feels really strong and really sturdy. So we won't spend too long here. As I say, really impressed with the look of that in general. No sharp edges and a nice smooth finish. We're gonna pull some of the pedals out of the packaging now. Well, first of all, we've got a cable in there. That's just a USB-A to USB-B cable, so a printer style cable. But we're gonna start off by pulling this brake pedal out of here. It's quite snug in there, which is nice to see when your package is traveling across the world. So this is a really, this is a beefy pedal. For one pedal, that definitely weighs a couple of kg, I would say. We also get some other elastomers in the package. It's currently using these red ones. So we've red, yellow and blue elastomers. I'm not sure which ones are the stiffest just yet. If you don't know, this is a load cell style brake, which most of these types of brake pedals are using now. Now, load cells vary greatly in terms of what they're rated for, how many kilograms of force can they take. So the capacity of this load cell is 200 kg, which is just about as high as you're going to see really. From glancing into the box, it looks like all three pedals are kind of set up in the same way in terms of how you would mount them to your rig. We've got these slots on the bottom, which, in most cases you're going to have no problem finding a way to mount them to your rig or even a decent wheel stand, I'll get into the details more when I've gotten a chance to try these out. These are just initial observations basically. Right there we have our RJ45 style connector. Presumably this is going to connect into our little control box that looks like I'm seeing there in the packaging still. So, and actually here, just this piece. This is actually a two-way hydraulic rod. These Simsonn Plus X pedals are a newer model, an upgraded version of their Pro Plus pedal. And they do say pretty much everything seems to have been improved. Now, I haven't tried out their previous pedals, but what they say is that they've enhanced pedal structure and quality. They upgraded the brake pedal resistance, the hydraulic system, the control box, and the software, while also making these compatible with their rumble motors. Now, they have also sent me out their rumble motors, and they're something I'm really excited to try out alongside these pedals. But I want to get a feel for these pedals first without the rumble motors. So I'm going to test these out for a while, and then I'm going to slap on the rumble motors in a separate video so that I feel I can give a better indication to you of how much they add to these pedals. And I am assuming it's going to be quite a lot. I do have high hopes for them, but we'll have to see. So anyway, let's pull another pedal out of this packaging. So here we have unmistakably our accelerator or throttle pedal, and I have to say that is a beautiful looking accelerator pedal. The nice long face on it and everything. Okay, so I'm gonna plant my hand down, keep this pedal planted as best I can with just my hand. There is no lateral movement at all internal to the pedal. I also tried this there on the brake pedal when I had that. A lot of pedals, particularly more at this price point, they do have that lateral play, that side to side kind of wobble. And while it's not always too noticeable during gameplay, or at least it's something you learn to tune out after a while, it's certainly nice to see here that they've taken the time to engineer these properly and make sure everything is just solid. We've also got their hydraulic system here on the accelerator, and of course I should mention that the main body of all the parts here is made up of 4mm thick stainless steel. So when it comes to rigidity or longevity, most likely not going to have any problems. Obviously, it's hard to say that's going to be the case for everyone, depending on certain defects that could happen. But predominantly, I don't see that most people are going to have a problem in terms of durability with the actual structure of the pedals. They've done a nice job of securing this cable down just with a simple tiny little cable tie there. So from initial impressions, I don't think you're going to have any problems with that snagging on anything. But of course, we'll see how that holds up. And yeah, I think we'll throw this to the side for now as well. Let's move our brake pedal over here also, and we're going to pull out the clutch pedal. And I was quite intrigued to see this when I saw the pictures online when Simsonn first contacted me. I love the look of this design. It's one I've seen now a few times and quite a few brands are going with it. I just really like the look of it. I think it just looks cool. I don't know how else to say it. It just looks cool. And I know that this is adjustable as well. I think we've got some other springs in the box here. For the most part then, in other areas, you know, the same thing once again. Quality control seems good. Again, no lateral play in any of the pedals. So it's nice to see that all three of them are like that. We've got this typical sort of adjustable pedal face design, and that's once again a feature across all three pedals, which is nice. Look, in terms of adjustability, when it comes to getting the positions right and adjusting the forces that are required to depress all of these pedals, I think it looks like you're absolutely spoiled for choice. But anyway, let's keep on going for now. So, okay, so this is what's left in the box. So I'm interested to see this little control box. Okay, so that's actually a nice neat little unit, smaller than what I thought it was going to be, just for some perspective in comparison to the clutch pedal face, which is quite small itself. Pretty much the same size, you know, there's a few millimeters in it, but not much really, which is nice if you're limited on places where you can maybe mount things on your rig. So we have our DC input, we have our 3 connection points for the RJ45 connectors on all the pedals, so clutch, brake, throttle. Here we also have the point at where the rumble motors connect to, which is quite nice to see that, you know, if you have just bought, say, these pedals, that it's not going to be that if you want to upgrade to rumble motors later on, you then have to go and buy a new control unit as well. You know, this control unit that comes with these pedals is already capable of running the rumble motors as well. So that's quite nice to see. We have a connection here that's marked upgrade. I'm not sure what that's for yet. And then we just have our connection for our USB-B cable to connect your PC. And obviously that's how this control unit then will communicate with your PC. So yeah, overall a nice, neat looking little control unit. Nice to see that they haven't gone with plastic here and they've kept the stainless steel theme throughout. It just kind of helps make the whole thing scream quality on initial impressions. So yeah, okay, let's check out some of the other little accessories that are in the box. So here we have our alternate elastomers for the brake pedal, but I'll be testing all the elastomers out in the brake pedal anyway, and I'll definitely let you guys know how they all perform. Now we also have some alternate springs. So I think the clutch pedal was supplied with 3 different springs also, just like the brake pedal with the 3 different elastomers. So we've also got these red and blue springs that I'll be trying out. And this looks like they provided a replacement spring for the accelerator pedal. I'm not sure yet if that's any different in terms of stiffness, but that will be another thing I will be testing out. And then I think, let's see, what have we got? Yeah, we've just got some bolts here. We've got some T-nuts and some more bolts provided with a Allen key as well. And just a couple more little bags left here. And these are the spacers for the elastomers on the brake pedal. So what else we got? Oh yeah, our little ground wire. So I saw there was a little ground wire connection on the control box, so that's what that's for. And our last little bag then with the Simsonn branding on it. We've got some nuts, bolts and washers. Also provided are a little spanner and a Allen key. So nice little impressive selection of stuff. Everything looks of very high quality. I don't see any obvious blemishes or anything like that after, you know, having a decent look over the pedals. So in case you're not familiar with these pedals, there is a couple of variations. For starters, you can either get them in silver or black. I've opted for black, but the silver looked great as well and it was torn. So there is a $5 difference in terms of price between the silver and the black ones. And then of course, you've also got the option of whether to get 2 pedals or 3 pedals. So that's going to be if you just want a brake and accelerator, or whether you want a clutch, brake and accelerator. So at current pricing, the 2 pedal setup in silver currently comes in at $284.70, and 2 pedal setup in black comes in at $289.70. So there's your $5 difference. The 3 pedal set then, like what I have here, is $395.90 in silver and $399 in black. So $5 difference or thereabouts once again. And that is just at current pricing. That could change at any time. But yeah, I'm pretty much going to go and mount these to my rig now. Okay, so I've just booted up the Simsonn software here, the Simsonn Manager software. I've been using this software in conjunction with the pedals, obviously, throughout my testing process of the pedals. But I actually haven't had to tinker with it too much because the software has pretty much been set and forget, which is actually a very nice experience to have, and it's not always the way when it comes to sim racing software. In fact, it's often very far from it. But anyway, on the homepage here, we have our games here on the right side. This is where you can let the software know where the game is located on your PC. So for me, most of these paths were automatically configured. I didn't have to do anything with them. But if you do have to set the path, it's as simple as just clicking on the set path option here and locating your game file on your PC. But as you can see here, most of my games are already set, and the only one that I actually set myself was Dirt Rally 2.0. So yeah, great that they automatically configured. You know, all the devices, whether they're inactive or active, there's a green strip under the pedals here to show that we have Simsonn pedals plugged in and it's recognizing them. So if we click on pedals here then, it will then bring us into our pedal window. And this is basically where you can take full control of your pedals. You know, so you can map the usual stuff such as dead zone, say here for your clutch. If you want, you know, the first 4% of your clutch to not do anything basically, or if you want it all the way up to 15% of the clutch not doing anything. You can also do that, of course, at the other end and have it so that the very last part of your clutch doesn't do anything. Of course, then that's applicable for all the pedals. You know, you can set the dead zones. So this will be where when you first plug in your pedals, you'll come in and you'll calibrate them. So up here, the blue box, you can click calibrate, start calibration, and you're going to press your pedals in as far as you can comfortably. That's going to remember all of the positions that you've pressed them into. You're going to click finish. It's going to write the configuration and then they're mapped. And it's as easy as that to configure the pedals. From there then, you've got a lot of options on what you can do. There's quite a lot of output curves in this, which means that with these pedals, it can be very worthwhile to experiment a little bit with the software before making some mechanical adjustments, especially if you're not so comfortable making them adjustments, because you can do quite a bit with the software here. You know, every pedal by default is mapped to a linear input, which basically means you apply 1% throttle, you're going to get 1% throttle. You apply 50%, you're going to get 50% output. It's just uniform throughout the whole travel of the pedal. But you have these different curves that you can select to use instead. So you've got ones like this that are almost like an exponential curve. You know, a very slight input on that clutch pedal there. And I'm already up to 50%. I'm only actually pressing, I would say, in around 10% of the clutch pedal if it were to be on linear. But because of this software applied curve, I'm at 50% of clutch. And then there's a lot of travel to get from 50 to 100. As you can see on the input curve there, it's such a big amount of travel for a small amount of pedal input. And you've got the exact opposite then on the likes of this output curve, where I'm basically fully in on the clutch there. I'm like 85% of the way in terms of the position of the clutch in the amount it can depress, but I'm only actually at around 50% clutch input according to the software. There's only a tiny bit more travel then to get it to 100%, but that's the idea of these curves. And there's another couple there that you can experiment with too. When it comes to the brake pedal then, you can set down here which elastomers you have currently in your brake pedal. For me, at the moment, it's the soft one, so I have it on soft. And you can also adjust the maximum force that's required to depress the pedal here in terms of kilograms. These same input curves can be applied. So if you wanted your brake to be at a very high input in terms of the software, at a very early stage of actually pressing the pedal, you can map that here, same sort of way as you could on the clutch. And the same thing applies for the throttle pedal then. So in terms of the use cases for things like this, well, even Simsonn themselves say in the manual that you know, say for the throttle especially, this second input curve here where a very little amount of physical input on the pedal, you're getting a big output in the software. Simsonn say that the sort of use case for that could be if you're in a very low powered car, you're racing a very low powered car and you know that wheel spin isn't really going to be a problem. So you want to just get to pretty much max throttle almost instantly coming out of corners and stuff like that. You can do that here so that, you know, it takes you less time to get to full throttle input. Personally, for me, I would never map any of these things, at least certainly not with such an aggressive curve like this. I kind of just like all my pedal inputs to just be uniform, linear the whole way through, and that's it, and just to modulate it myself. But I can see the use cases here. When it comes to the input curves, you can also completely make a custom one. You know, you can just start dragging these little boxes out to whatever way you would like them, and, you know, really come up with some crazy input curves depending on your needs. As I said, I don't think I'll be using it, but it could well come in handy for some people. You can, of course, save your profiles then once you've made your changes that you want to make. And something that is pretty nice to see is that you can actually import other people's profiles. So if someone has some profile online that you want to try out, you can download it, import it into this software, and you know, you're using their profile now. Up here then we've got the feedback settings. This is for if you have any of Simsonn's rumble motors. I don't have them on the pedals just yet, but I am going to be reviewing the Van Pros soon. So I'll get into this section of the software in that video. You also have the light section here on the left, and this would be where if you have the other model of the pedals that includes RGB, you could map that to your liking, do whatever with that. But that of course isn't available on these pedals, so we won't look too much at that. And that's mostly it for the software. As I said, it's been really smooth for me so far. I've really liked using it basically because I haven't had to use it, which is a nice thing. As I said, when it comes to sim racing products, this isn't always the case. Not that I'm looking at a particular wheelbase that I have in front of me or anything, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, I really like this software. It's pretty minimalistic, very user friendly, I would say. I think most people will be able to use it pretty easily. And yeah, Simsonn have done a good job here. But anyway, that's it for the software side of it. So let's take a look at the hardware. Okay guys, so I've been using these pedals for around about a week now, and overall I would definitely say I'm really impressed. But with that said, let's get into some of the key points about these pedals. Okay, so one of the first things I'd like to say is that this instruction manual is actually very good. Often with some cheaper products, or you know, some products made in China, the translation isn't always the best. But you know, the English written in here is really clear, easy to read, and you've also got diagrams showing how to do everything. And you know, when it comes to pedal adjustments and stuff like that, they've even got graphs here showing the amount of force it takes in kilograms to compress the pedal, and also how many millimeters of travel it will take depending on which adjustments you've made on the pedal. And you know, that's just one of many examples with this manual. You know, they even show every possible type of brake configuration you can have there. And yeah, overall I would just say it's really high quality and it does add to the experience. And certainly if you're not so used to adjusting all these different things on a set of pedals like this, it will definitely help. But yeah, speaking of adjustments, when it comes to these pedals, you do really have almost an infinite number of options in terms of how you want them set up. So when it comes to every pedal on the Simsonn Plus X pedals, as I alluded to earlier, you can adjust these pedal faces by just, you know, simply undoing the nut and bolt on each one, and you can heighten or lower it depending on your preferences. When it comes to pedal travel, this can also be adjusted across all three pedals. Pedal travel is controlled by this little blue block on all three pedals. Yeah, so basically the blue block is secured in by a couple of bolts, and there's pre-cut slots in the steel of the pedal to accommodate you adjusting the position to get a different amount of travel basically. Then, you know, you can move this forward or back depending on your preference for travel. So that's a pretty easy adjustment to make. So I'm just going to tighten that back up for now. Another thing that can be adjusted across all three pedals is preload. And what preload is basically just how much the spring on the pedal is already being compressed. So what that will do then is it will determine how much force is initially required to depress that pedal. So the actual force or range that the pedal compresses through as you press it more will be unchanged, because the spring still gets compressed in the same way, but you're just determining bring that initial amount of force required. So if we take this clutch pedal for an example, if we undo this little lock nut here that's keeping everything in place, we can then gain access to this preload adjustment nut, which you can just adjust with your fingers, which is handy. So I had this spring pretty well compressed in terms of preload, just for testing purposes. I'm just unscrewing it more and more here, which, you know, I'm putting less compression on the spring to the point of now where the spring actually isn't compressed anymore. And that spring you can then move freely. But yeah, we'll tighten that back up. But that's basically how you adjust the amount of preload that you have on your spring. And as I said, that's just going to change the amount of force that's initially required to depress your pedal. So then let's make sure to tighten back up our lock nut then to keep the preload adjustment nut in place. And that's it. Preload is pretty easy to adjust on these pedals, and it does have quite an effect. To adjust the preload on the brake and throttle pedal also is pretty much the same process. You know, just undo the lock nut, tighten or loosen the preload adjustment nut depending on your preferences. And that's pretty much it. You can also adjust what's called the pedal force curve. So unlike adjusting the preload, this doesn't just adjust the initial force required, it actually adjusts the overall force that it requires to compress the pedal. So on this slider right here, you can see the bolts are around about in the middle, which is basically middle of the road when it comes to the sort of force that it takes to actually depress the pedal. If you put it to the highest position here, that'll make the pedal overall a bit harder to depress, and the lowest position will be the easiest to depress. So take your Allen key and your spanner, loosen that off, and you can see that we can now adjust that up or down depending on our preferences. So another pretty easy adjustment to make that does make quite a difference to the feel of the pedal. I'm going to leave it at around about the midway mark for now because I pretty much enjoyed the feel of it how it was. The force curve of the clutch pedal can also be adjusted. It is a little bit more involved than how to adjust it with the throttle pedal. You have to adjust it in two positions. So you've got these sliders on the front here on the actual clutch pedal arm, and you've got all these different slots to choose from here on the rear section of the pedal. At the moment, this clutch pedal is set up so that it takes the minimum amount of force to depress, because this bolt in the front is at the lowest position and the one in the back is in the highest position. If you wanted the maximum amount of force required, you'd basically just reverse that. So on the front of the pedal on the arm, put the bolt in the highest position, and back here, put it in the lowest position. It's not quite as simple as that because I do have the stiffest of the 3 springs that came in the set currently in the clutch pedal. So although the pedal is set for the lightest position to depress, the spring is actually the stiffest one. So it's still set up to be very stiff at the moment, but we'll get into that more in a minute. So when it comes to the brake pedal then, Simsonn have employed a system that really does make it quick to adjust the pedal, and I'll show you that now. So as we know, you can adjust the preload on the brake pedal as well as on the other 2 pedals. But to adjust this actual brake stack here, we actually need to loosen the preload lock nut. You might not necessarily have to do this. It depends on how stiff your pedal is set up. You're supposed to just be able to, you know, press your 2 thumbs here and lift this plate out, which I can do. But just to demonstrate to you guys this way of doing it in case you do have it set up a lot stiffer and you can't just do it with your thumbs. So we've cracked off this lock nut here. If you undo or if you loosen the preload adjustment nut, then you're taking the force off them elastomers that's compressing them. So then you'll find it a lot easier to lift it out just like that. Then it's just a case of pulling off this plate and some of the other components here. And pretty much from there then, you know, you can just pull these off, these spacers, pull off the elastomers, and you can swap them for the other ones then that come with it. So I assumed when the pedals arrived that the brake pedal was going to be set up with the medium elastomers, but apparently the red ones are actually the softest ones. Then we've got the spare ones in this pack here. The yellow ones are the medium stiffness ones and the blue ones are the hardest ones. They're both going to give you a much firmer feeling on the brake, but there is a lot of ways you can adjust the brake pedal stiffness before even touching the elastomers, before changing them out. So by default, it comes in the softest setup with a good amount of travel. But yeah, if you take away a couple of these elastomers, or instead of the 3 that are originally in it, so say it's set up something like that to begin with, you could just replace this first elastomer here with just plastic spacers, and that's going to dramatically change how your pedal feels in terms of travel and resistance. I did try out the blue and yellow elastomers. I actually really liked how the pedal came set up right out of the box, so I ended up putting the red ones back in. I think the default configuration is really good. I can understand people who would want a stiffer pedal, especially for the likes of road racing, you know, in particular things like GT racing or F1 racing. But I kind of play all different types of racing. I do a lot of drifting, rallying, and occasionally some road racing too. So I like having a more of a do-it-all kind of pedal. So on the brake and clutch pedal, there are two-way hydraulic rods. According to Simsonn, in the case of the brake pedal, the initial stage of travel is meant to simulate the brake pad clamping onto the brake disc, and then, you know, the further you press in that second stage, the more compression you're going to get, and eventually, you know, you keep pressing and you're just sandwiching those two together. And I have to say, I actually really do think it does emulate that feeling quite well. I was really impressed with the feel of the brake pedal right off the bat. I loved how it was configured, and it was probably the pedal I changed the least about from how it came to me from the factory. The clutch pedal then, as I said, is also equipped with a two-way hydraulic damper. Basically, the first stage of depressing that pedal is, you know, before the clutch is engaged and you go into that biting point, and then you feel the clutch pedal just get a lot easier to press. And once again, I think they've done a really good job here of simulating that feeling. When coming from, say, just a normal set of pedals that don't have a hydraulic damper, a two-way hydraulic damper, this will blow your mind, the feeling that you get on this clutch pedal. I really like how they've done this, and I actually chased more of the feeling from how it initially came to me. I felt the whole pedal was a bit easy to depress, so I swapped out a couple of springs, changed a few things about it. So when it comes to the clutch pedal, the spring that comes in it is once again the lightest spring available in the set of 3 that come with the pedal, and that's the yellow one. The blue one is the middle of the road one, and then the red one, which I currently have in here, is a very stiff spring. I personally really like the blue spring in it. You can see how stiff it is with this red spring in it currently. I can't really depress it properly with just my hand. I can do it with my foot, but I do still prefer the feeling of the medium strength. And I'm actually going to show you how to change out that spring now. So there's 2 lock nuts on this threaded rod. This lock nut in front of the preload adjustment nut, if we undo that. And there's this one, this lock nut here that helps keep everything in place. Undo that. Then take some of the preload off of the spring, and then you can spin the whole rod. It will all come out as one unit. That's it off of there, and now we just push that out, and there we go. That's our full, almost our full clutch pedal assembly. You can pull this part off the end then, take your spring off, and simple as that. I'm gonna pop the blue spring back onto this because I like that on it. So there we go, just on like that. Put this part back on the end so it can lock in position, keep the spring in position, and just in reverse order then basically push it back into the slot on the rear of the pedal and just start to thread it back in basically from the end. You'll feel when you're fully there because it just won't tighten anymore. You want to tighten back up your lock nut to the back of the pedal. Set your preload again. You may have to play around with this a couple of times after reinstalling because it's, you know, hard to get it back to exactly where you had it unless you mark it or something like that. But then we do back up our lock nut on our preload adjustment nut and tighten both lock nuts. So it's very quick and easy to change out the spring on the clutch pedal, which is nice to see. I better just throw my brake pedal stack back on here too. And that's most of the adjustments when it comes to the brake and the clutch pedal. On the accelerator pedal then, I was thinking this was just a spare spring, but it's actually a lighter gauge spring that comes included. You know, so you can see that's quite a light gauge spring. It's very easy to compress. The throttle pedal does come, I would say, quite stiff right out of the box for a throttle pedal. I did lessen the preload on it ever so slightly to what it came with out of the box. And that made a big difference because what was happening for me was I felt like the preload was set that little bit too high, so that, say, if that was the full travel of the pedal, I was trying to force it past that first stage and I was already kind of ending up down here, you know, at maybe 20-30% throttle without really being able to properly modulate after the initial press. So I just lessened some of that preload. and that made it so I was able to get on the throttle more smoothly. But these are just personal preferences, and you know, maybe you like your throttle pedal set up really stiff, maybe you like it set up really light, but there are definitely options there for both. One thing I'll definitely say is that when people refer to like squeezing the throttle pedal rather than pressing the throttle pedal, I really feel like you can do that here. There's a lovely feel on the throttle pedal, great feeling across all three pedals. You know, they're all equipped with these hydraulic dampers. The throttle pedal just has a one-way hydraulic damper, unlike the two-way hydraulic dampers on the clutch and the brake pedal. But this hydraulic system provides a really nice feel, and combined then with the load cell sensors on each pedal, you obviously get a very accurate experience when it comes to input reporting. So yeah, overall really impressed with both the look and the feel of these pedals. I obviously got mine with the heel plate on the front here, which was very easy to install, you know, just using, I suppose you could call them standoffs. They're threaded the whole way through, so you put a bolt in one side, put a bolt in from the bottom, and you basically clamp the plate to the standoffs. So really nice simple solution there, really nice system of doing that. The pedals themselves were quite easy to mount to this plate. Yeah, I wouldn't say you need the plate, you definitely don't. You know, with the way the pedals themselves, the three pedals are set up, you can mount them pretty easily to most rigs, I would say. Or even wheel stands or anything like that. But I do like having the plate. It allows for even more adjustment and a slightly easier mounting experience, I find. And I just like the aesthetic it gives, really. One thing I did notice is that for the first day or two, the throttle pedal did have a bit of a squeak, you know, when pressing it. It's not doing it now. It also felt almost like it was getting caught in some places, like it was a tiny bit notchy. But because of the symptoms I just described, I'm pretty sure there was something just, you know, causing a bit of friction somewhere, whether it was inside the hydraulic damper and, you know, the lubrication inside there just worked its way through over a bit of use. I can't say for 100% certain, but it's perfect now. And it was only a very slight niggle to begin with, but I just thought I'd mention it in case any of you guys decide to pick these pedals up or a similar set from Simsonn and, you know, maybe they have the same issue. Because of the way the plate is with so many different mounting holes on it, you can pretty much have the pedals in any position you would like. As you can maybe tell, maybe more so if I put these front on, I have my brake pedal a little bit closer to the clutch pedal than the accelerator. That's generally how I end up liking it to be set up. It is great that you can adjust these so much and get them exactly to your liking. Even in terms of the heel plate here, I have it set up so that it's just flush with the front of the main plate underneath, but you can have it offset depending on what way your feet naturally rest, I suppose, when you're sim racing. A similar situation also occurs for the pedals themselves on the plate. Maybe if I hold these up slightly, it might be a bit easier to understand what I'm saying. But once again, I just have the pedal finishing at the same sort of point that the plate does. But if you needed your pedals to be further away without moving the full plate, you can once again have the pedals offset when it comes to the plate, and they could be sticking off of here, you know, a good few inches, and it wouldn't be a problem. But once again, nice to see that adjustment on there. And then obviously you've got the mounting slots for the plate on the outside here, and they're all M8 slots. Yeah, so overall I'm really impressed with these pedals. The clutch and brake with their two-way hydraulic dampers, they really add a feeling that you do not get, you just simply cannot get without the hydraulic dampers. Really just adds another layer of immersion to it. You know, when you're pressing the clutch and you can actually kind of feel that biting point, and then you get a pedal that's easier to press once the clutch is engaged. You know, that's just next level. And the feeling of the brake, I really do, as I said, think that it emulates the feeling of a real car's brake pedal quite well. The throttle pedal as well also gives great feel. As I said, it's quite nice to have a throttle pedal that you feel like you can squeeze and really modulate perfectly. So I do rate these pedals very highly, especially for the money. You know, you can easily go and spend 2 or 3 times more, and you probably won't be getting pedals that are much better, or they might not even be better at all, to be honest. The software is also very intuitive and easy to use. I had no troubles with that right out of the box, which, you know, for some of these companies that are providing such great value products, and you know, maybe they can be trying to cut some corners. Software can often be the first thing to kind of take a hit, and it can be a bit flaky, but that's definitely not the case here. The software has been absolutely solid. I've had no issues with it so far. So yeah, if you would like to pick yourself up a set of these pedals or any other Simsonn products, please don't forget to use my affiliate code, as it does really help me out. It means that I'm going to be able to get more products like these and review them, let you guys know my thoughts, which is something I really do enjoy doing. Thanks to Simsonn for sending the pedals over. I also do have the Van Pro rumble motors to review that Simsonn sent over, which is actually something I'm really excited about, because these pedals are already brilliant, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they perform once we've added another layer of immersion to them. So if you want to see that video, please be sure to subscribe, like the video, and comment your thoughts on these pedals. But that's it from me here today. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.